Okay, here we go. Cody Adent, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. I always wonder whenever I see somebody like you, and you've got an amazing following, you've done some great things with the books and all that you've done. I always wonder where this positivity comes from. So, people ask me all the time, well, what was your upbringing like? Like, what happened that you just have this great outlook on life? And I'm always interested to hear how that happened. So, could you just tell me a little bit about maybe how you grew up and how that kind of formed the attitudes that you have today?
Yeah, I think, well, if you talk about childhood, I had a really supportive home. So my mom and dad were both there and they were both teachers in my younger adolescence. So they were home a lot. So I got all that time with them. I got the weekends with them. I got the summers with them. And I played a bunch of sports. And so I was really involved. And my dad was my coach. So there was like that great bond. But I think that my positivity really started to be reinforced in my life as I got older and I got into reading books. And so much that I read, it was so indicative that like what you believe creates your life. And so whatever you think is true is going to be true. And so I realized, like, why would I create an obstacle for myself that doesn't even exist through negative thoughts? Right. However, I think about something is how something will be. And so I think through doing all that due diligence and research and reading all these different books, it became so inherently obvious. And seeing the successful people in my circle and people that I knew and interacting with them, one common denominator is those people always have good positive outlooks. And so I think all of our success starts in our mind.
Was there something though that got you to say, well, you know what? I need to improve the way I think. So I'm going to start reading books or I'm going to start talking to people. Was there some event or some moment in your life where you said, you know what, I need to work on this? Or was it just like a natural progression towards that?
No, so growing up, I had a really hard time learning. So like going up through school, I could never like perform in the way the school wanted me to. So I always like kind of felt like a little bit lesser than because like I knew intellectually
Yeah.
like I wasn't on the level as my peers. And so going through school and education in high school, I knew like, all right, well, college isn't going to be for me because I don't even like school anyways. And I'm either going to have to get money to go to school or get money to start a business. And so obviously it was pretty clear for me, I'm going to go the business route.
Yeah,
And
right.
my parents didn't have even though we had this great household, they didn't have a lot of financial acumen. And so I saw the mistakes that they made, but I also didn't have a source of good information because they were my only like model to show how to handle finances. And so when I was really young, I said, all right, I'm going to buy every book I can on finances and I'm going to learn and teach myself everything I can about the way that money works. And then once I got into that, that created a motivation to read and to because now I finally was like, okay, I'm getting knowledge for me, not because the school said so. And so that became insatiable. And I just got on this path of all these amazing books. And through like realizing I could learn so much about finances from those finance books, it was like, well, what else can I learn? And that's what started me reading like the psychology books and the inspiration books and learning that all of this amazing stuff exists and people have already figured it out. So why am I going to go through the struggle of trying to figure it out for myself? I'll just take the advice of someone who's already done it.
See, I love that, and I've always thought that mindsets, emotions, whatever they are, your brain can only take so much in at a time, and it has to decide what it's going to keep in, what it's going to leave out, and your emotions are always fighting for space in there, right? So I've come to the conclusion over the years that being positive is not something that occurs naturally. It's like a choice you have to make, right?
Oh yeah.
So how do you teach people that come to you and say, Cody, I'm really trying to change the way I think, but I'm just stuck in this negative space. How do you convince people, first off, that it is a choice and then help them to make that choice?
I think using an analogy is always helpful. So if you think about someone who's really fit, you can look at them and you can say, wow, they're fit, right? Because they exercise their body. And we inherently know it's important to exercise your body and to be healthy. But too often, I think we forget to exercise our mind. And so you can't just be positive without putting in the work to become positive. Just like you can't be fit without putting the work in the gym. And so what I say is you've got to actively work towards it, right? And so use just like you would go and you would do a prescribed exercise from someone in the gym, you can go pick up a book on positivity and surround yourself with people who have that same positivity that you desire. Because if your inner circle is instinctually negative, then it's going to be very hard to break that bond. Just like if the circle of people you hang out with are always eating bad foods and having bad habits, then your habits aren't going to be good. So I think if you think about your mind the same way as you think about your body, I think that's the disconnect, is people just think it's so easy to switch from I'm stuck in this route of negativity to, oh, I just can, now I'm going to be positive. Well, it's no different than if you've been really unhealthy. You can't just become healthy overnight. It takes a process. And I think if you give yourself that grace to understand that I'm going to have to keep working at it, then you can get there. And that's what's helpful with the bracelets in my book and Winning the Moment, is that you could use that as your winning moment, right? So if like you are set with something that happens at work and your gut instinct is to be negative about it, well, you can pause for a second and say, gosh, if I change the way I think about the situation, I'm going to change the reality of the situation. And so you force yourself to do that, and then you can move a bracelet, and that is creating that habit loop for yourself where you can start building those positive habits. But it's going to take time, just like it takes time to get healthy.
Well, that was the very next question I had, which is, you have somebody that says, Cody, I tried this, okay? I got up and I thought positive, and it kept me for a couple of days, and then something happened. I fell back into it. And they always talk about 21 days to make a habit. They talk about triggers, which is some of the things that you use, which I really, really love because I use them all the time. How long do you think it might take somebody to switch? I mean, are we talking about maybe transforming your body? Are we talking about weeks and months to do this?
I think it depends how much work you put in, right? Because just like someone who, if they're committed to going to the gym for 8 hours a day, they're going to become fitter faster than someone who
Sure.
goes to the gym 1 hour a day. So I think
Right.
it depends on how much work you put in, and you're in charge of that process. And ultimately, the harder you work at it, the quicker you're going to get there.
And you talk a lot about, and I think that goes along with what we're just talking about now, the choosing to lose thing that you talk about. Can you just kind of put that out there for us?
Yeah.
Because I really loved that from what I saw on your socials and in the book and everything. I really love that particular piece.
Yeah, I think that too often, we know as a person what we want to do and who we want to be, but we still make those bad choices, even though we know this choice is counterintuitive to my end goal, right? And so sometimes you just need that trigger to stop you. So if it's like, if you want to get up early tomorrow morning and exercise, but you also know you want to have that beautiful glass of whiskey tonight, well, you have to decide in that moment and don't choose to lose, right? Because I know if I have this cocktail, it's going to inhibit my ability to do the thing I really want to do tomorrow morning. And so when you use that phraseology to yourself of don't choose to lose, it's just, again, our brain is going to make a decision in a really short period of time. It's like Mel Robbins has the 5-second rule, where she basically counts down from 5, and that's what her catalyst to make being the person she wants to be. It's really, I'm using that same science that she's talking about, and you're just using that as the catalyst to make a good decision, because you don't have to make a good decision for the rest of your life in that moment in the evening. You just have to make it for that one singular moment. And it's way easier to decide to not have a cocktail tonight than to not have one for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm a bourbon guy. You mentioned whiskey, and
Yeah.
it's I have this bourbon bar in my basement, and sometimes it's all too easy to, after a bad day, to go down there and go, well, I'm just going to have one of these
Yeah.
real quick. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think I probably should get some of those bands that you have on your wrist so I can flip them from one wrist to the other. Say, well, maybe I'm not going to do that. It's Tuesday, maybe I'll wait till the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it was for me even last night. So let's see, yesterday was Wednesday, and I was like, gosh, it really sounds good to have a little bit of whiskey and go sit in the hot tub and watch the basketball game. And I almost did it, but instead I just filled up water instead, and I used that as one of my winning moments. And then I was able to get up this morning and do the things I got to do. And so I appreciated that I made that choice for myself last night.
No, that's perfect. So you talk a lot about being present, and I absolutely love this. In fact, there's a book out called The Present, and I had it in a book club in my office with the staff. And there's no doubt about the power of, you can't control yesterday. You can only control something about the future, but you can sure as heck control this very moment in time. So
Yeah.
if you're like, how do you square? Because my whole thing is about being a very visual person, about seeing what you want and then going to get it. How do you square, or how do you have being, in the future, visualizing your goals with being present at the same time? How do those two things live
Sure.
alongside each other?
I'm glad you asked that because I think it's really important, because being present doesn't mean you can't have goals, right? Because what I want people to have, I think that too often people have an ability to underestimate what they can do, or I'm sorry, overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 3 years. So I want you to have, like Jim Collins says in Good to Great, a big, hairy, audacious goal that's out there in the future that you're
Right.
trying to get to. But what you have to understand is whatever that goal is, I can't get there today, but I know what I have to do today and every day for the next 900 days to get there. So I just need to make those good decisions in the present moment that allow me, if I stay on course, to get there. But you have to have it there, because if you don't have something in front of you, it's hard to have the motivation to do it. Like if I was to go and jog and I said, I'm just going to go for a run today, and I twist my ankle, well, then I'm just going to go home because I had something come up. But if I
Right.
say I'm going to run 3 miles today and I twist my ankle, it's like, oh, I got one more mile to go. I'm going to finish, because I had a destination in mind. And so I think it's important for people to take the time and determine where you want to go so you can be motivated in the moment to get to that place that you're striving for.
Yeah, and I think that's hugely important because in my world, having a lot of goals allows you to live an anticipatory life, whether you're anticipating a goal that's a vacation in 3 months, or saving for a
Yeah.
house in 5 years, or maybe improving your body, or even saving for long-term retirement, which is 20, 30 years away from now. I
Yeah.
like to have several of those occurring at the same time, because I believe when you live in anticipation of something like a vacation, there's just this kind of force that kind of drags you along and gives you that extra push that you need to go do that. When you're anticipating, and I loved what you said about working out, when you're anticipating somebody waiting for you at the gym, it's a much stronger force than you getting out of bed in
Yeah.
January in Ohio in the snow to go drive to
Yeah.
that gym. So
Right.
I'm always thinking about being the best possible version of yourself, but you have to see what that is first. So I love what you said about, don't try to fit into society's bubble. Can you expand upon
Yeah.
that a little bit for the listeners?
Yeah, I think again for me it probably started as a kid, right? Because school wanted me to be a certain way and I just wasn't that way. And it wasn't that I was lesser than, I was just different, right? And then there was like all this pressure to follow society's guidelines of go to school, go to then graduate high school, go to college, get a job, stay in that job, have your family. And it's like I don't think people ever take a time to decide for them what success looks like, because success for someone else doesn't mean that it's success for you. And I think it's so critically important, especially for our youth and really anyone who hasn't yet defined it for them, is you wanted to find that for yourself. And it brought me back to a conversation with a friend of mine. And we were sitting in the hot tub one night talking about success. And I said, if someone wants to surf every day and they just live on the beach and surf, well, I think that person's successful. And he said, no, you don't. And I said, yeah, of course I do. He goes, I know you. You don't think that's successful. I said, that isn't my definition of success. I don't even know how to surf. So, of course, I don't want that for myself. But if that person wants it and he's doing it, then definitively he is successful, right? Like, it's not about money or material items or income. And it can be, if that's what your goal is, that's okay. But if someone's goal isn't that, that's okay too, right? And so I think it really is important for you to feel that sense of appreciation and confidence and belief in yourself, that you define it and don't let someone else do it for you. And I think it, for a lot of us, it's like it's parent pressure. Like I was just reading a book where this one guy's parents wanted him to be an attorney. He wanted to be a PE teacher. So he went through 3 years of school, like working towards being an attorney, and finally realized, like, I hate this. I hate every day of my life. What am I doing? And he was
Yeah.
so afraid to let his parents down that he'd wasted 3 years. And he finally said, I'm not doing it anymore. And he went and signed up and became a PE teacher and had a great life. And so I think it really is so important that you find your why and your purpose, and that's what you work towards, because it's the only way you can feel fulfilled in your day to day. And life is meant to be enjoyed and to be loved and appreciated. And if you're doing something that you don't love and you don't enjoy doing, it's impossible to have that happiness that we're all after.
Yeah, we always talk about, you should happen to life, not let life happen to you, right?
Yeah.
Because, that's incumbent upon all of us again, to discover, try to figure out who our best selves is. And
Yeah.
I do a lot of drawing, Cody. I have, in my coaching, I have a lot of people that I just sit them down with a cardboard and a box of crayons and say, let's draw your perfect nirvana. Like if you could live the way you want to live, what kind of car would it be? What kind of house would it be? What kind of spiritual thing would you follow? What kind of charity moment would you have? What would your pet look like, a dog or a cat, and what color? What would you name it? Get really specific
Yeah,
about like a
sure.
vision board, but way more specific than that. And what's amazing is every time somebody draws something, it is completely different from the other 20 people in the room. So
Of
yeah,
course.
if that is true, then why would you listen to what the crowd is doing? You know what I'm saying? And so again, I
Absolutely.
really appreciate what you're saying there, because you're trying to get everyone to understand that you and only you know what your favorite color is. Nobody else does.
Yeah,
So why are you listening to other
right.
people? You know what I mean? In
Yeah,
some of these channels. Now, you just talked about college. Okay, I'm a blue collar guy, right? Um,
yeah.
I didn't go to school. You didn't go to school. What? I'm not an anti-college guy. Okay, so if you're going to be a surgeon and you want to operate on my shoulder so I can get back on the golf course, you better learn everything there is to know about a knife before you come at me with it, right?
Yeah,
So,
agreed.
so those are specific degrees that get you specific jobs from a specific school. What's wrong with the non-specific college system that we have today in your mind?
Well, I think if you look back in history, we had child labor like way back in the early parts of the United States. And what they did is they said, well, we need these kids to be more educated and better employees. And so that's what created school, is they wanted to send these adolescent youth to a 4-year time so that they could go and be better workers, not leaders or not builders, not developers, but really the workforce. And so I think that if you look back to the roots of how college started, if that's what you want to be, then that's okay. And maybe you can go through that path and then you can just go and go to your work every day and show up 9 to 5 and do your job. But if you want to create something yourself, I think you're so much better off just starting, because it's easier to fail in the beginning because you don't have all these life responsibilities that are required of you, right? And so
Right.
you can take those risks. And I think that you got to fail to success, and you're never, unless you're just super unique, going to just start out and be successful right away. And so like, even for me in my life, where I had some entrepreneurial starts in the beginning, there was a time when my family was coming about that I was like, ooh, I want security, and I no longer am comfortable taking that risk. And eventually I got myself out of that and went back to it. But I could see why people would be afraid and let fear guide them and stop them from their pursuits, because they want that security. And I think that's what college can provide, is a certain level of security, but I don't think it provides abundance. And so I think if you really want to create a life that's custom tailored to your desires and your goals, then your best way to do that is to just start.
So I have this theory that I put out in what I talk about, and that is that, let's assume that you borrow $50,000 a year to go to school all in, and I'm talking books, travel, gas,
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
So that's 400 or $200,000 at the end of 4 years. Hopefully you didn't borrow that money, right? So in today's day and age, with the blue collar crisis that we have, which is really getting bad. I mean, you can't find people to do these jobs anywhere. Supply
yeah,
and demand dictates that where the supply is low and demand is high, that's where the money goes, and that's what we're seeing. So, you could almost come straight out of high school and make 50, 60, $70,000 a year in one of these construction jobs where you're in control of your own destiny or some type of trade. If you
yeah.
add that up after 4 years, that's 200,000 in the positive side of your asset base. You're talking about a potential $400,000 swing by the time you're 23 or 4 years old, in from the negative to the positive. When you're out there talking about the fact that you didn't go to college, in fact, you recently visited a college, I think.
Yeah, correct.
How do you school? I mean, how do you get that? Whether you're aiming that at teachers who think, well, this is a college prep high school, so we just have to send everyone to college because that's how I get graded, or the parents or the guidance counselors, or I mean, how do you get that message out there that it's never been true that 100% of the population should go to college? So why is that true now?
I think the best way to do it is doing exactly what we're doing now, and creating a platform to show people who are in high school and are trying to make that decision of like, what's best for me, for them to be able to see that there's people who haven't followed that path and have been able to find success. And what's funny is, like, most people, an accolade is like saying I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I was the exact opposite. I was the first person in my family to not go to school. All my parents, all my aunts and uncles, all my cousins. And so like there was a time my mom was like really disappointed that I was the only one that didn't go, you know? And I think it's just because I was willing to start my journey, and I wanted to be in control. And so I think that it's important, even if you're young, to really find your why. And if your why is aligned with that traditional path, then do it. But if your why is aligned with something else, just start. And in today's world, with the internet and with TikTok and with Instagram, like even video games, you can make a living just playing video games if you're good at it. So there's so
Yeah.
many new paths to creating that life that you want for yourself, that I think it starts with defining it. Because I think what happens is people go to school because they don't know what they want to do. So it's almost like they're just delaying their decision by 4 years. Like, well, I don't know what I'm going to want to, I don't know what I want to do. So I'm just going to do
Right.
this. And so, but 4 years is a huge amount of time. Like if you and I start a race and I get to start running and you don't start running until 4 years later, because of compound interest, you may never catch me.
You won't. Yeah, you're exactly right. You won't. And that when you talk about the power of young money, it's ridiculous that we don't teach this in high schools, because you could almost eliminate
Agreed.
Social Security almost altogether if you just had these proper conversations with people in high school about keeping their first few dollars to
Yeah.
themselves. You know what I mean? So yeah. So when you talk about college, one of the statistics that I've uncovered in my research for my book was 40% of people today enter college without any idea why they're going. I mean, that
I believe
seems
it.
crazy to me. And then the stat goes on to say that 25% of those kids who eventually decide change their decision, okay, in the first 2 years. So there's some
Yep.
inefficiency there. But the worst part was only 1 out of 3 people ever use their degree in their life ever. Okay. So
Yeah.
that is a horribly inefficient system for, again, the non-specific college attendee, not the doctor, lawyer, teacher, nurse, whatever, because they
Right.
have a specific
Understood.
path. So I look at this and I say to myself, okay, I never went to college, but when I do see colleges, like my buddies went to Ohio State or my other buddy went here, whatever, the only thing I think I missed was the party atmosphere and the social aspect of it, because
Yeah.
I'm using the skills that I learned in a non-specific way for the non-specific, jobs that I had, the construction work that I had. So why did you decide that college wasn't for you?
Really, it was a financial decision, right? So at that age, because my parents didn't have the means to pay for school for me. So it really came down to X's and O's of college is going to cost X, my business is going to cost Y. And I'd much rather put money into something that's going to return money to me than into something that may down the road potentially return money to me. And honestly, like, so I started my business when I was 19, a cell phone store, and I sold it in April of 2008, which was really fortunate because of the financial crisis. I was able to exit prior to that. And then I was able to use that as a business owner, right? I was able to be qualified for a management position in a big corporation. Even though I ran my store by myself, I had no employees. But because I had owned a business, of course, the job seekers were like, oh, this guy owned his own cell phone store. Of course, he's qualified to manage, right? And so it created this artificial what's the word I'm looking for, like respect or approval that like I could do this thing. And so it got me into that corporate space, and then I was able to parlay that in 10 months of performance to become a district manager, which most of my peers had like MBAs and they were 15 years my senior,
Right.
right? And so I took this very accelerated path to get into this incredible role that gave me so much back in life through income and through inspiration and through education, right? Because I really learned on the job. I'd never managed people in that capacity before I got that role. And I got that role at 21. But so I was in a role that I wouldn't have even yet had graduated school yet, doing something that had I gone the traditional route, like had I graduated school, I wouldn't have been qualified for that management position, right? I would have had to just start from the bottom anyways. And so it
Right.
really created an ability for me to forge my own path. And that's just given me such a head start in every other thing that I've done, because now I've created this an amazing amount of experience through doing the actual positions.
So did you feel like you were faking it till you make it and making it kind of thing? And I mean, did you feel surprised
Yeah.
that you were qualified for that management job when you only ever had, you didn't have any employees before?
The first one, not so much, because it was in a kiosk. So I only had 4 other employees. And I was like, okay, I'm great at sales. I'm a natural leader. Like, this is fine. When I got that new role, the district manager, where I had 12 locations across the state of Arizona, absolutely. And all of my peers had so much experience and so much knowledge. I mean, it was like, yes, I very much felt like, oh shit, I kind of don't belong, you know? And
Right.
so it put me on like that, hey, I'm gonna have to figure this out, you know? And I remember in the first couple months being like, I'm gonna get fired, you know, like I should not be here. And I started that job in May. So the first 2 months, June, July, August, and then by that fourth quarter of that first year, I was the second best district manager in my region of the southwest part of the United States. And
Nice.
then the next year, I became district manager of the year for the entire company. Um, and so it was really amazing to see, like, wow, I didn't need all of that other stuff, because it's ultimately about relations, right? Like, the way that I succeeded
Sure.
was through finding out what drove my people and helping them understand that their success got them closer to their goals, not to the company's, right? And by motivating them through what their purpose was, we were able to have immense success. And so really at the end of the day, it just came down to relations. And I built all those skills over the course of my life, just through interactions and sports and the companies that I'd started.
You know, it's funny that you say that, because I was working at a place that dug ditches. I mean, that's what I did from the time I was 15 till the time I was 18. And I learned the business so well that, the owner was trying to franchise his company out because we were growing so fast. We couldn't possibly go 2, 3 hours in every direction. And so they kind of dumped me off in Columbus and said, here, we're going to have you start a business from scratch for our new owner, okay, who knew nothing about this business. So here I am, finding a lease space. I'm 18 and a half years old. I'm looking for buildings, and I'm trying to build buildings out and get the, the wiring and the phones. And I knew nothing about any of this. I mean, I was just winging it as I went along.
Yeah.
But, I thought to myself, well, I've never built a business before, but if I had, the first thing I would do is probably find a place to have this business. And I just kept saying that over and over until I actually created this company. And then I left and did 3 or 4 more of those before I started my own. But, I wonder how you and I can get the message out that you really are so much more powerful, armed with your own vision of what you want your life to look like. You really are so much more powerful, because my fear is that people look at me sometimes, and I've heard it. Oh, you're lucky. You're one of those entrepreneurs. Okay, well, here's a crayon and a piece of paper. Draw entrepreneur for me, right?
Yeah.
You can't. But yet, an entrepreneur doing what? Okay, now I can draw that. So do you believe, like I do, that, again, armed with a really super clear vision of what you want your life to look like, your perfect nirvana, I call it comfort, peace, and freedom. Are you in agreement that almost anybody can be an entrepreneur?
Oh, of course. I think everyone's in control of their life regardless of a path they want, right? Like my when I was in sales, used to have like the sales reps were at the bottom be like, oh, well, Ken's just lucky, and it's like, really? Like, that's what we're gonna put it on? Like, let's watch Ken for an hour. And in 1 hour, Ken talks to 40 people and you talk to 4. He's not even better than you, because you closed 1 of 4, he closed 4 of 40. So your close rate's higher, but he sold times as much as you because he's hustling harder, Like, I don't believe in luck. I think if we're flipping a coin and you ask me to guess heads or tails, if I get it right, it's lucky at a 50-50 chance. But as far as the success or failure that people have in life, that's 100% on them.
So how do you convert people? And I really love this conversation. I could talk about this all day. How do you convert people who are typical? I mean, our typical society lives an if-then life. If I go to college and if I get a good job, or if I get a scholarship, if I go through all that process and then I get a good job, and if that job pays money, then I can start living my life. I believe in starting with the then and working backwards towards it. And the thing about that is if you're armed with that clear picture, there's like a million different ways to get there. Only one of them being the college path. So how do you change this whole, societal expectation that, well, I birthed my child and I fed my child and I clothed them and I protected them and I sheltered them and I gave them my basic knowledge and I sent them to a school. So now to finish them off as a good parent, I therefore have to get them college educated. How do you flip that narrative a little bit to get them to understand that no, there's a lot of other ways to get to those successes, and that's only one of them.
I think the only thing that I can think of, because it is such a, like, it's so ingrained in
Yeah, it is.
our culture and our community. And so it's like, that's like, they go to school from kindergarten on being told like this, you're doing this to do that, you know? And
Right.
so the only way that I can think of is to continue to do what we're doing and use platforms and things like books to share that message and inspire people to believe in themselves. Because like part of what I say in my book is like, I don't know anything, you know? So it's like, I'm just a regular dude. I didn't have like this upbringing or like this huge opportunity that no one else had. Like I created it all for myself. And so I hope that that can be an inspiration for other people to see that, like, oh, without having any sort of a head start or any opportunity that doesn't exist to anyone else, you can find that success for yourself. And I think that if people really start by defining success for them anyways, then that'll completely change the path they want to take. Because if they really say, well, this, like what you said, if I draw on a cardboard box of the crayon what I really want, let's start there and then look at the paths to get to that drawing.
And again, I think the other thing people have to really realize is I think there's this predetermined, well, success means 15 cars and a McMansion and, a yacht and maybe a singing career. But, one of the first people that turned me on to how to live successfully was a guy that I talk about who I saw him at a Club Med, believe it or not. It was 20 years ago. And you go to a Club Med, they put a wristband on you and you get a week with that colorful wristband, and they know when you're coming and going based on the color of the wristband, right? So here's a guy that had 7 or 8 of these wristbands on at the same time. And I finally said to him, I said, hey, what's the story with all the wristbands, And he said, well, I work in Minnesota and I mow lawns and do landscaping all summer long. And when I shut down my shop in December, I literally go to Club Med for 10, 12 weeks straight. And I've been doing it for years, and that's my thing. It's my reward. I get to travel to these different islands. I get to hang out with all these different people. And that was his version of success. He had a regular ranch house. He had a really nice pickup truck, and his tools and equipment, everything was perfect. But his version of success was the freedom of 3 months a year. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In my mind, when I think of trying to get someone to understand that we all don't have to have that, again, mega rich, mega mansion type lifestyle, how do you point kids to understand that they really can control what that looks like for them and what their perfect nirvana might look like?
Yeah, I think sometimes it's about like how much work it takes to get to that level, right? So it's like in the beginning when I was younger, I thought like I kept putting it on a dollar amount. Like once I get 6 figures, once you get $250,000 a year, once you get $500,000 a year. But then I started seeing people earning that money and I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to oh, I have to work really hard for that. I don't want to work that much,
Right.
And so as I got older, I realized how important my family was to me and the time at home and the ability to disconnect. And like, I'm leaving tonight to go to Mexico with my family for spring break and to have the opportunity to be completely disconnected, not have to worry about anything. Like that's what success is to me. And so it stopped becoming about a monetary number, because once you get to a certain level anyways, your life doesn't really change that much, right? Once you have like all of your base things that you need covered, then it's really about how do you enjoy your life. And so I think sharing that message that like you may not want the work that comes along with this. You could be much happier working 7 months out of the year, spending 3 months in Mexico and having a really, really great life. Like that is success, And again, don't let someone else define it for you, or don't let Instagram or TikTok or any of these platforms make you feel lesser than because you don't have this thing you see other people having. Because one, you don't know how they got it. You don't know if they actually want it, right? I know plenty of people who are very wealthy and not happy. And so I would trade happiness for wealth any day of the week.
Yeah, I write about that myself. I know a lot of people who are rich who are miserable. Okay, and it's only because for the most part they work too much, and secondly they feel like they're out of control, like they're at the behest of everybody else, and they're not in control of their own time. So just as much as being important for me to draw the pictures of what I want my life to look like, I also have to take pictures of the things and the memories that I've accomplished along the way. You know, because you write down something about a car or a truck or a motorcycle or a sports car doesn't make it a materialistic goal. And that's not really the thing. I mean, you're not looking to park these cars in the front yard so all your neighbors can see them. But if you can take that car and go race it on the track and create an awesome, exhilarating moment for yourself, or you could take your family and load them up and go on a trip out west, you know, those are the things. So I try to remind people not only to visualize what you want, but also to document and memorialize pictorially what you've done and put that all around you, because then you can kind of live in this, wow, look at the cool things that we've done and the cool experiences that we've had. So love what you're saying there. Tell me about what you're doing now, because you went from working for yourself, which is great, and then you started working for a corporation. So what happened after that?
So when my daughter or my wife got pregnant with my daughter, this was 9 years ago, instantly had a sense of like, oh no, like I got to do more, you know?
Yeah.
And so my daughter was, when she was 6 months old, we packed up everything from St. George, Utah, moved to Houston, Texas, and I created a marketing company with two of my best friends. And we built that up to where our last year we paid out over $1 million in commissions to our reps. And
Wow.
then when my son was born, it was like, okay, it's actually time to get back home now, you know?
Yeah.
And so I started a financial practice as a financial advisor because I still wanted to be in control of my own destiny. And I had rented a space in an office from one of my best friends from high school, Breck, to do my financial firm. And he had overheard me talking on the phone with my wife, Megan, because we have a budget for our family. And at the time where we were in that transition, our budget was really tight, right? And so she had gone over her budget by like $5 that month. And I was like, hey, we can't go over budget, you know? And she's like, well, it's only $5. It's like, right. But the budget, you can't go over it. That's how a budget works, right? So even though it's $5, it matters. We can't do that. And Breck overheard that conversation, and his family had owned this really luxury property outside of Zion National Park for 30 years. And he was like, man, I've not had anyone treat our business as finance like Cody treats his personal finance. And so he asked me to be the CFO for that property. And that was 6 years ago. And while doing that, we realized, hey, there's an opportunity for us to take this property to the next level by joining a major brand like Hilton or Marriott. And so we ended up joining the Hilton collection with Curio. The property is called the Cliff Rose. And then doing that, we realized we had to have a management company in order to still retain management operations of the property. And so that's why we created Vibrant Management, originally just to manage that particular property. And so Breck and I are co-founders and partners in that. And this April, we'll celebrate our 5th year of Vibrant Management being in operation. And now we've got over 20 clients from all the way from Florida up to Canada.
That's that. I mean, again, the American dream, right? It's the ability to control your own destiny. So we're talking with Cody Adent, and there's too many things that I could tell you about him. He's an entrepreneur. He's an author. He's all over social media talking about some great things. If you want to get your day picked up for yourself, just get on some of his socials and listen to some of his reels. They're just really good, and they will definitely flip your mindset towards the positive in no time at all. Amazing work that you've done over your career. So for those out there that are listening, how cool is it to work for yourself? I mean, versus working for somebody else?
Honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. You know, like right now I'm at home because I have the ability to do that. So I have an office too that I'll go to. And like my kids had their parent teacher conferences last week, and not having to ask for time off or being worried I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah.
I'm able to just go to their school, do their parent teacher conferences, coach their little league sports. It just creates freedom. And freedom for me is what I deem as success.
Yeah, it's one of my 3 tenets, okay? Comfort, peace, and freedom. There's no doubt. I was able to watch every swing my daughter ever took in golf for the 4 years of her high school. Again, didn't have to ask anyone's permission. I'll be back, handle it. I'll be back when we're done. And those are the types of things that you just can't get back. I mean, so many parents that I say, oh my God, it went so fast. I didn't get to see this. I was so busy at work. I would encourage everybody out there, the beauty of working for yourself, you get to control your input, which means you get to control your output. You get to control the quality of that output. You get to control your day, your time, your schedule, your financial gain, and you get to live a life like Cody here, who who can really run his own show and determine his own destiny. And I just think there's nothing better than that. So in the time and the space and the freedom that you had, you decided to write a book. How'd that happen?
So it's something I'd always wanted to do. Like as I got so inspired with all these books I read, I was like, man, I hope one day I can inspire people the way that these books have inspired me. And I got on this journey to finally hold myself accountable at the end of 2018, where I had always been so successful professionally, but like I never held myself to that same standard, like what we talked
Yeah.
about earlier.
Yeah, I
I'll
know
go to the
that
gym if
feeling.
someone's waiting for me, but no way I'm going otherwise.
Right.
And so I created a spreadsheet to like manage that for myself. And I had a bunch of success, and I shared that out on LinkedIn, and it kind of went viral and went all over the place. And then when COVID hit, being in hospitality, we were so impacted by that. And so I kind of had lost my way and had a little bit of a victim mentality and realized like, okay, I got to nip this thing in the bud. I got to turn it around. And how can I make my spreadsheet more real for me? And that's when I came up with the idea of winning the moment with these bracelets. And I realized, okay, I don't have to do everything perfect forever, but I just need to do it perfect right now. It's so much easier for me to make a good decision, like not having that cookie this afternoon, than it is to say I'm never going to have cookies again, right? Because it's unrealistic. I'll never do that. I'm absolutely going to
Right.
eat cookies, but I can decide to not have one this afternoon. And so then I was like, man, this could really be something. And I'm a big believer in the universe. The universe wants us to succeed. It gives us all the opportunity to
Yes,
reach that
sir.
success if we answer the bell, right? And
Absolutely.
so we're reading a book with our management team, and Brett calls me one Sunday and says, dude, everything in this book I've heard you say before, like you've got to write a book. And I was like, I know, I want to do it. I'm going to do it. And then that Monday, someone reached out on LinkedIn, my publishers, and said, hey, we found you. We think you might have an interesting story to share. Are you interested in going through the process with us? And so in the spirit of like answering that bell, the universe gave me this huge sign and said, look, here's all these signs. Are you going to take it or not? Because I believe if you don't, the universe will stop giving you opportunity because you've shown that you don't actually want that thing you said you want. Your
That is a
actions have to
great point.
equal, yeah, your actions have to equal your words, because words are nothing. And so I took that leap of faith and went through the process. And 2 years later, it's a real thing, and I couldn't be more proud. It's a really cool accomplishment and one of those lifelong goals that I get to now cross off the list.
The book is called Winning the Moment. And I can tell all of you out there listening that, I've gone through this myself. Writing a book is a process. And what's really funny is once you get it done and it has some success, you will have a lot of people around you go, I'm going to write a book. Yeah, I've always had this idea. I'm going to write a book. And then you say, okay, go ahead, because it's a much bigger project than you think it is.
Yes.
I think for me, Cody, writing the book was the easiest part. Okay, it's everything that followed.
Yeah,
Was
that's true.
Yeah, right. With working with publishers and agents and media people and PR people and all that other kind of stuff, it is certainly a labor of love, and you have to be awfully proud that you accomplished that, because, like you said, you can do a lot of things in business for yourself and for others, but to do something for yourself, finally focus on yourself and say, wow, I might even be a little selfish here, not at the behest of others or the detriment of others, but just to work on me. So tell us, what's the book about and who's the reader?
So the book is really about figuring out how to live your best life. So we've talked a lot on this episode just organically about like how can you be the best version of you, and even just what you just said, like be selfish for a little bit. I think it's important because I can't be the best husband to my wife if I'm not the best person for me first, right?
Exactly.
So if I'm willing to sacrifice myself always in the spirit of others, eventually I'm not going to be able to give them the best version of me. And so I think it starts with you, and this book is really going to give you the tools and tactical stories and antidotes as to how you can get control of your day. And in that regard, I think it's for anyone, right? Like if you're in a bout of depression, I think it's a great book to help pull you out of it. If you're on a path to success, I think it's a great book to put fuel on that fire. And so I think whether you're young, old, or in the middle, I think it's a great book. I think it truly is one of those books that anyone can read. And it's really easy too. It's 178 pages. It's really told in a story format, so it's easy to digest. And I think that so far, like reading the reviews on Amazon, my hope and aspiration of what I wanted people to get out of the book is really rang so true. And so I think if you're skeptical, go read those reviews. I think it'll put you over the edge and show you why you should get it.
Yeah, and again, it's one thing to write a book about a crime story or a love story or something else, but when you are endeavoring to help somebody else with your material, I think it's it's just such an honorable position to come from. You know, I mean, you can entertain people, you can make them laugh, make them cry, you can make them afraid in some of the
Yeah.
novels that you see, in the books that you, in
Yeah.
the stories that you read. But for me, it was always about, you know, my world was pretty good before I wrote this book. So I was all about, if I could cut the learning curve down for a future entrepreneur or someone who's thinking, you know, why is everyone telling me I have to go to college? I want to be a carpenter. Okay. I really love building things. If I could
Yeah.
speak to that one person, and you're doing the same thing, you're speaking to that one person who says, okay, maybe I am in control of my life. Maybe it's not what everybody else is telling me. So, what would be one thing you'd want them to take away from this book? Maybe something they could actually read it, put it down, and go, okay, I'm going to do this today.
I think the main thing I want the reader to take away is that they are in control of their life, good, bad, or indifferent. No one controls your life but you. And so you can let other people try and control it for you, or you can control it for yourself. And sometimes that's just a battle with your mind, right? Because you are in a constant dialogue with yourself about should I or should I not? And you need to get back control and let you dictate what your life is going to look like.
Yeah, and I think you do a good job of saying, and if you do that, there are rewards. There are rewards for you out there
Absolutely.
if you make that happen for yourself. So, in the final moments, what's next for you? What's next for Cody? What's on the horizon?
So I talked a little bit about Vibrant, and we've got some really exciting things in the pipeline with that. We're working to build what could be just a truly, absolutely world-class resort. In addition to growing our company, we've been doing EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's a
Yeah,
great
yep,
tool
it
for
is.
business owners. If you have a business out there and you're looking to like, how can I take the next step? We're almost 2 years into it, and I didn't want to do it because I'm a conservative CFO and it's expensive. It was worth every single penny. We could have never achieved what we have achieved so far had we not gone down that process. And so really excited about what we can do with Vibrant. And then for myself with the book, I really hope it creates an opportunity and a platform for me to go speak to larger audiences of people, because I want to help as many people as I can. And I think the most effective way to do that is to get in a room with them and share my message.
Yeah, I think that, as they say, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So it's incumbent
Yeah.
upon all of us to share the gifts that we have, no matter what they are, with as many people as we can. And again, hopefully, you know, it's not about reaching everybody. It's about reaching one person, or one person at a time, I should say, and making some great things happen for them in their life. And you know, they'll come back and want to thank you for it, and they'll want to blame you for their success, but you know, you're going to turn right back to them and say, I may have had 3% to do with your success. You know, the other 97% was you and
Yeah.
you alone. But thank you for that. So yeah, it's definitely an honorable role to take. So you've heard me say a few times about comfort, peace, and freedom. Um, when I first started writing it, these three words just wouldn't leave my head. And you talk about, you know, a calling that you get sometimes, and you ought to take that calling. Well, I started writing down some stories. I actually was writing a letter to my daughter, who was pretty ill at the time, and she went through a scary couple of years, and her mother and I were like, wow, you know, how do we get through this? And again, those words, comfort, peace, and freedom, just kept coming back. And I'd done a lot of coaching, so she encouraged me to maybe put these stories out there, and to talk about what's really important in life. Okay, what is your perfect nirvana? So I ask everybody that I talk to, if you could say this, where is Cody his most comfortable?
Ooh, I'd say, well, that's a two question answer, right? I'm most comfortable at home with my family if I'm just being like fully comfortable. But if you're talking about professionally, like I love helping people. Like when I can have an audience, whether it's like a sales team or it's my team at Vibrant or it's a classroom of students, being able to share something with them that I think will make a difference is I've never been uncomfortable in that situation.
Perfect, love it. And you not only have not been uncomfortable, you thrive in that. So that's what
Yeah.
makes it even better. So let's talk about the second one, peace. If you have some time off and you're looking to go find some peace somewhere, and you're like, okay, it's Cody's time, I got to unplug and do all that. What are you doing, and where are you going to find peace?
That's why I love golf, because it takes about 4 hours and there's no distractions and you're in nature and there's this internal battle with yourself. Like you can be playing other people, but you also play yourself in golf, which I love. And so I think that that's probably my favorite place to go and decompress and find some peace.
So you're going to tell me we've been talking for nearly an hour, and just now you're telling me you're a golfer? I mean, I'm an absolute addict to golf. Okay, I probably play 100 rounds a year. I just absolutely love it. And to your point, you're right. Everything on the golf course is your fault, good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, that is
and
absolutely true.
and you can be cruising along 15 holes and like, man, I'm going to break 80 today, and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 someone just kicks you in the butt, and there's
Well,
80, there's 81.
and what I love about golf too, I shared this on a podcast on before, is like what's so unique about golf and in life is that in order to get better at golf, I have to at first get worse, right? Because
Yeah,
like whatever skill set I have can get me that, it can get me a 90 like consistently. But if I want to shoot an 85, I'm going to have to make a change in my golf game. And at the beginning of that change, I will absolutely be worse because I won't have mastered it like I did the swings I used to get to 90. And so you have to
correct.
be willing to be worse in order to get better. And so I think golf can be such a good life teacher in that way.
All right, so I'm going to interrupt my comfort, peace, and freedom thing for 1 minute, just so I could ask you, what's the coolest course you ever played on?
Ooh, the coolest course I've ever played on was probably when I was in the Dominican Republic, and it was, I can't remember what the course was, but it was right along the ocean and it went through a bunch of beautiful mansions, and it was spectacular.
That would have had to have been House of the Teeth of the Dog, right? Teeth of the Dog, or it would have been Die 4. Do you remember either one of those?
Guy Four sounds familiar.
Yeah, beautiful place. Really, really beautiful place. I would have to say Cypress Point for me on the coast of California, because you couldn't
Oh yeah,
focus
I'd love
on
to play
golf
that.
with all these tidal waves going by you. I mean, you couldn't even focus on golf. It was the most beautiful place that I had ever been. So getting back to comfort, peace, and freedom, what's the final one is freedom. So if if you're going to feel free, okay, you've got your comfort, you've got your peace, and you're like, wow, right now I'm in a place where I just feel totally free. Where would that be?
It's probably again at home with my family, because if I'm there with them, it means that there's no other outside source that's influenced me to be somewhere else anywhere than where I am. And I guess really in the theme of today's podcast, that's when I'm present, because wherever I am, that's where I have to be, and that's where I find the most freedom.
Awesome. Where can people find your book, and where can they find you?
So you can go to codyadent.com. I've got a link to my book there. You can buy it directly from me. I also tell people, if you have a place you love to buy books, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target, wherever, just buy it there. That's what you love to do, then do that. If you do buy it from me on my website, I'll sign it and send it to you. You can also buy the bracelets on codyadent.com. And then most of my socials are just Cody Adent. Or if you type that into Google, you're going to find me.
Perfect. Great talking to you today. I love speaking with like-minded people, people that are willing to help and share their talents and skills with others. Cody Adent, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for the platform. I really appreciate it.
You got it.